My name's Dave DeBow, founder of MoneyPartnerFormula.com, and this show is built for everyday real estate investors who are actively doing deals and looking to scale using other people's money. So if you're an active real estate investor and you want to get featured on this show to talk about your own real estate and capital raising experiences, then just go to daveinterviewsyou.com. Now let's get rolling with this episode, and remember to subscribe for daily interview content. Hey gang, welcome back. Today, zooming in from beautiful San Diego, California, we have a very, very experienced real estate investor, syndicator, developer, build to rent kind of guy. This is Andy McMullen. And, you know, if you've been around real estate for a while, if you've bought existing buildings, you've probably thought to yourself from time to time, geez, it would be so much better sometimes just to build from the ground up, get things the way we want them to be, get the kind of people we want into the places, and just have more control over the whole process. Well, if you've ever thought that, you're in for a treat today, because that's exactly what Andy and his team do. They build to rent. So Andy, welcome to the show.
Yeah, Dave, you got the smooth voice. I'm really excited to be on this pod with you. I've been listening to your pod for a while, so thanks for having me.
Well, thanks for that. Yeah, I've got a face built for podcasting. That's what they say. So Andy, let's zoom out. Give us a 30,000 foot perspective. What does the business Legacy Acquisitions look like mid 2025? What does the portfolio currently consist of? What kind of properties? What areas? What kind of chunk of it is already built out versus in progress and in development? Just give us an overview.
Yeah, sure. So I've been doing this, 25 years. So quite a few iterations, as it were. Definitely experience with development. So probably the mid 2010, probably mid 2005, 2006. We did some apartments throughout the California area, Northern California, Central California, some in Southern California. But most of our focus now is owning the apartments that we currently do have. A lot of our focus is in the South, make it a lot easier for us to build and develop. And
what is the South? You're about as south as it gets.
I should say Southeast, so all the way on the other side. So our projects are mostly Carolinas, Louisiana, Lafayette, Louisiana. We love that market. Foley, Alabama. So areas like that, Texas, we own some stuff. So we still do have some properties that we own in California, but for most of the 2,000 units, they're, spread across the Southeast. And then I would say over the last 7 years or so, Dave, we've been focusing really on this built to rent trend. And so I'd love to talk with folks that are kind of curious about that. It's not unlike apartment, right? Just think of pulled apart apartments or horizontal apartments.
Okay, well, yeah, because there's all kinds of build to rent. So yeah, maybe what is your definition of build to rent? What do these buildings look like?
So what we're considering, the projects that we look for, I should say, are single family rentals in one enclosed community. So we'll build 100 to 300 units that are in one enclosed community, and we'll manage them and operate them just as we would an apartment building.
So they're individual houses, or are they duplexes, side-by-side duplexes? What do they look like?
So for the most part, they're detached single-family homes, and then in some cases, we'll have townhomes. So we've got a project now in Lafayette that's over 100 units, and we'll have probably 80 of those will be single-family detached, and then maybe another 20 that are townhomes. Got a project in Alabama that would be 241 units. Most of that would be 3s and 4s, and maybe a couple of 2-bedroom, townhomes. So
the individual houses, what do they look like? What size are they? Just paint me a picture.
Yeah. So if you think of anywhere from 12 to 2,200 square feet. So you could have a 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom. We like a project that we've got currently is all 3-bedroom, 2 baths. 1,400 square feet, detached, backyard, really kind of simplified, not a large clubhouse, but certainly walking trails and dog parks, really kind of just all single floor. So those are kind of the projects that we can scale quickly. If we can do that, every market's a little bit different, right? We're looking in northern Raleigh, which is going to have a little bit more, more expensive rents, probably need to have a pool, probably need to have a clubhouse. So we build to the municipality that wants us there. Um, but lucky for us, most of the Southeast wants built to rent housing, right? We've got an affordable crunch here, and I think in general the municipalities that we've been working with there want to have detached
Well,
single
it definitely
family
sounds
homes.
very appealing, Andy. So I'm just kind of zooming out here. What is from a development point of view, because that's what you're doing, what's the advantage of doing it this way versus building, vertical and instead of because, a lot of people say the efficiencies of an apartment building or multifamily building is
Yeah,
one roof, one parking lot,
right.
one major heating system, one,
Yeah,
massive efficiencies of scale, et cetera, et cetera.
yeah,
You've gone the polar opposite, and that's building a whole bunch of lovely homes,
yeah.
but each one is its own entity kind of thing. So,
Yeah, and I think if we can kind of backtrack a little bit to that 2008, you remember what that time was like, Dave, where you had a lot of the large kind of institutional guys buying these scattered homes in various counties and trying to manage them, and it was a nightmare, right? And then 2012, 2013 development started to open up, so these guys could basically build right next to each other all of these single homes, and then rather than waiting for a C of O where the entire apartment is complete, you're basically leasing them with their individual
okay.
COs as you go, right? So you could have cash flow of stabilizing 10 or 20 at a time as you grow, dipping that cash, recycling it back into either paying off the previous loan on your development side, and then stabilizing that with the vertical as you're going unit build, and stabilizing that with a permanent loan. So I think those are their efficiencies there. I think we found in our communities, we try to do, keep, we put like a CRO, which is like a community resource officer or chaplains in certain projects, and the residents tend to stay longer when they're in these communities because they know their neighbors, they're out walking the dogs. It's a little bit more, beneficial to that community feel than being on top and underneath.
Oh,
Um,
from a tenant point of view, they must love these kind of properties compared to an apartment. I mean, you don't have neighbors on either wall and up and down and all around kind of thing. Yeah, huge, huge advantage there.
yeah, you know what I think was interesting. We learned, Dave, is I thought we would attract those residents kind of in their family formation years, right? Maybe that they don't care about the picket fence, American dream of owning a home. They just want new stuff and clean stuff, and they don't have the stigma that we might have had growing up with that single renter that didn't take care of the yard.
Hmm.
But what I didn't expect, and I should have, if I was smart enough, I would have expected, but those folks that are maybe empty nesters that have 15 more years of active living, 20 more years than they did previously of active living, they would love to have their barbecues and the kids over, but we'll cut the grass, right? So that's been kind of a lot of
Yeah.
the
I was
the
going to ask you,
residents
who
that
is
we
the
didn't expect.
demographic? So it's more older type folks that like the idea of having a house, but hate the idea of maintaining a house
Right.
and would rather have you guys take care of that. Is that what
Yeah,
I'm
and
understanding?
the younger folks, but
And
but
the
but
younger
and,
folks.
and that I think is proven true. But I was kind of thinking that maybe it would just be the family formation years. But I think we're finding out a lot more on that other side, pre kind of assisted living, and so anyways, that was kind of an interesting
That's
look
very
to it.
cool. That's very, very interesting. Yeah, no, it's and now it's starting to make sense. So you're able to roll out, let's say 20 of these, get them built, get them leased up, get things going, stabilized, refinancing what happens to take on the next phase of the project versus waiting to build a 120 unit apartment building, which, it's kind of has to all come on all at one time kind of thing. It's a more challenging to lease out. Well, so there are lots of advantages to it. What are some of the disadvantages to the whole build to rent houses type model?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that what we're seeing in the market in general, um, we're kind of getting hit from all sides, right? You got
Mm,
insurance costs, you got
mm,
higher interest rates, you got, tariff, whatever that is. So there's certainly an uncertainty. I think that we're still in the very early innings of build to rent in the sense that, the establishment or the institutions probably have 40% of the apartments, but they've got like 4 or 5% of these built to rent communities, right? So it's a really small percentage. So in many regards, it's somewhat newer. And so
mm.
people obviously like to see this trend and become a little bit more. So, I think that's probably a little bit of a negative. I think educating lenders over the last 3 years has been a lot easier than it was when we started this 3, 4 years ago, right? It was harder to
Yeah.
get loans for it was easier to get loans for apartment buildings than single family residents. And then I think in general, we've, with the interest rates where they are, a lot of the money is kind of pulled back on the end buyer, right? So where we used to have these institutions that might take on 400 or 500 at a time, those guys' capital hasn't quite come back yet. So
Mm.
I don't know if those are all specific to built to rent. I think it's more endemic in with real estate in general and kind of where interest rates are and the kind of common perception, whether that's dictating reality or reality is dictating perception. It's kind of hard to, at this point, it's uncertain. But those are probably some of the things that I keep me up at night to a certain extent.
Yeah, I hear you. So big picture, Andy, are you guys in the business of build it out, get it all leased up, and then sell it to an institutional buyer? Is that kind of the end game? Or are you looking to hold on
As
to some of these?
and a lot of this, Dave, you've been in this game a while. A lot of it is dictated by the investor.
Yeah.
If I had my druthers, I would keep all of them and hold them as long as possible. I think every project has a little bit different makeup. So some of these projects, the investors like to be out in 5 to 7 years.
Mm.
But I think the principals, at least the three that are signing on the loan with me, or two that are signing on the loan with me, would like to be able to keep these long term. And I think that's for a number of reasons. One, at least I'm talking about 7, 8, 10 years. I mean, once you get past then maybe it's not as new, right? And
Mm.
you can't run those operating expenses like you can for a new project at 32, 35%, where you're running apartments, closer to 50.
Mm.
But yeah, so I think every deal is structured a little bit differently. But as we're talking to younger investors that I know listen to your podcast, I'm sure that you drive by some places that you either passed on or you sold and you kind of wish you still had them. So as a general rule, I'd like to be able to hold on to real estate a little bit longer.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So, Andy, we're already halfway through 2025 as we're doing this recording. What's on the horizon for you guys for the next 12 to 18 months? And I know it's rocky roads right now, but if you could wave the realistic magic wand, where do you see the company going over the
Yeah,
next
you
year
know
and a
what
half?
I've been kind of pleased to see, despite all the kind of negative news, and every cycle, as you know, is a little different, right? Every market has its ascending and descending markets and cycles, but the projects that we've been sitting in that kind of secondary markets have been leasing up. So any projects behind us, there's typically either a moratorium on development or people are a little bit unsure about bringing new dollars in. So where we kind of sit now, we've been in a good spot in advancing the projects from what we'll do is typically we'll option the land, then we'll go through all of the entitlements, and then we'll buy it with our money, right? And then we'll take it out to investors.
Mm.
And so typically in those kind of phases, there's a lot of things that you could be buffeted about, whether it's approvals, city approvals, or engineering, or new municipalities, et cetera, that come in. But I think for us, what I'm pleased to see is that there's been quite a bit of progress in this built to rent space. There's new money coming in. So specifically, what I think we will be focusing on is the 4 active projects that we've got in various stages, stabilizing and at that most advanced stage, really focusing in on the asset management part, making sure we're adding as much value to the community as we can. And then, in various stages of the horizontal, making sure that we're staying on our timelines. As you know, in this game, so much of it hinges on the speed with which you can progress.
Yeah.
So I would say probably not doing a whole lot of acquisitions. We're in the middle of the acquisition that I referred to in North Carolina, and that would probably keep us busy for this next 12 months with the projects that we currently have.
So you got four kind of on the go. What stage are the four different projects?
Yeah, so stable, like probably 80% stabilized on one side to middle of horizontal infrastructure, streets, roads, and utilities on the other side to um, early stages of, you know, finishing up really the end of entitlement, early stage of the horizontal. So almost all of them are entitled spots, with
Hmm.
the exception of the North Carolina. Um, and now we're basically going through our development partners and loan partners for the horizontal. Or if we, in the case of the fully stabilized projects, we're now in the process of moving a lot of these construction loans, horizontal loans into permanent loans. So
Mm.
as to kind of bring it back, what we discussed earlier, as we're progressing 10, 20, 30 at a time, we can take that equity and that new appraisal value and kind of push forward with the new projects so that we're raising fewer of outside dollars and keeping more of the project with our investors that currently invested. So that's kind of where we are.
And for folks like myself who've never been part of a project like this, from optioning the land to building it right out, leasing it all out, I understand each project is completely different. But with your experience, Andy, what's kind of the typical time frame? So let's say you see a piece of land, you get it optioned
Yeah, great question.
to where it's like completely built out and leased up. What does that kind of look like
Yeah,
usually?
if I was to, so typically 36 to 48 months, but if I was to kind of break it down, maybe it would give people a little more information.
Yeah.
So if we were to find a piece of land today, maybe it takes us 9 months to get the entitlement. So maybe we say, hey, owner, seller, we think that we can develop, here's our project, here's our plan. We will pay for all of the entitlements ourselves. If we can't close, or if we feel like there's some stumbling block, you've got a more valuable piece of land here that's got some approvals, some engineering, drawings, etc. We'll buy it contingent upon that. Or an option play, like I said, maybe $50,000. Let us take the ride for 9 months to a year to get the entitlements. Then we'll buy the property. So maybe that potential, after we've got the entitlements done, the horizontal piece is maybe another 9 to 12 months.
Mhm.
And then I figure we can usually build about 10 to 15 units per month. So depending
Wow.
on the size of that project, maybe that's another 12 months. So that's kind of in that 36-month period or time. And then I try to add on a tail for stabilizing another, 10 to 12 months. In many cases, we can lease as we go on some of
Mhm.
the previous projects that we've done, lease as we go. So it's a little faster than it would be multifamily where you're, getting the C of O, then trying to start the lease up process.
Yeah.
But in that,
Then you got 120 lease all at once kind of thing. Yeah,
yeah,
that's
yeah,
a lot more
exactly.
challenge.
That's kind of why I've been pleased to see the data coming out of
Mhm.
the projects that are in our markets that are ahead of us are leasing out in that 10 to 20, unit pace.
So Andy, you're in California.
Yeah.
Sounds like you're a pretty hands-on kind of guy. Do you have your own crews in these different locations, or do you sub out the build outs to other contractors? What does that typically look like?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that the unfair advantage we have in the areas that we operate in the Southeast, so I'm thinking of Lafayette, Louisiana, Foley, Alabama, in the areas of the Carolinas, is that we've got our GP team, and so it's basically three of us principals signing on the loan. Two of those guys are familiar with entitlements for the last 20 years in those markets. So a lot of the relationships with the municipalities. So in
Hmm.
effect, it's a partnership. What Legacy brings to it is the kind of putting the the deal together, bringing in some of the capital, managing the asset, managing the property management, the boots on the ground for the construction, and the engineering is kind of overseen by us, obviously,
You
but
got the other
dealt with our
GPs that are in
partners.
charge of that, basically.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's smart. Makes sense. Very, very cool, Andy. Well, thanks for kind of laying it out. That's much clearer for me now and for our listeners as well. So I'm sure some folks are going to have some questions or want to get a hold of you. What's the number one way people can connect with Andy McMullen?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Dave. So I would check out our website, legacyacquisitions.com. I don't know, we've put up as many books together. How many books do you have now, Dave?
A few.
Yeah, you've got a few. So we've got one, and it's just
Nice.
built to rent. So download that sucker at our website, and would love to talk to you. I just, as I know Dave does, we just love talking about business and opportunities and deals and what make people tick. So feel free to reach out. Love to talk with you.
Awesome, Andy. Well, thanks very much for being on the show. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, thank you, Dave. Appreciate it, man.
All right, everybody. Take care. We'll see you on the next one. Hey there. I really hope you enjoyed that episode. And as always, if you want to listen to more daily interview content, make sure you subscribe. And if you're an active real estate investor and you're doing deals and you'd like to get featured on this show, then just head over to daveinterviewsyou.com.